Hey friend, before we get back into the episode, I want to offer you something that might deeply support you right now. If you've been feeling stretched thin, if you're carrying that familiar fundraising anxiety, or if you're craving a moment to step out of the pressure and reconnect to yourself, I'd love to invite you into a brave and balanced breakthrough session. This is a live one-on-one coaching session tailored specifically to you. As a certified coach and former fundraiser, I work with you beneath the level of surface level mindset tools into the somatic and emotional patterns that shape how you show up, what you believe is possible, and ultimately the results you create. Most fundraisers walk away from this session feeling clearer, steadier, and more able to raise money with ease and freedom. Not because they changed their strategy, but because they got out of their own way and reconnected to their internal source of strength. Right now, this session is $97, and the price will be going up in the coming months. So if you've been thinking, I should do this at some point, let this be your gentle nudge to take action. You can book your session through the link in the show notes, and if something in you feels pulled toward this, trust it. That inner tug is your wisdom speaking. All right, let's get back into the episode. Welcome to the Brave and Balanced Fundraiser, the podcast I wish I'd had during my 15 years as a professional fundraiser. I'm your host, Erin McQuaid-Wright. This is your space to breathe, realign, and reconnect with the part of you that chose this work for a reason. Together, we'll explore tools and practices that help you show up less stressed and spread thin, and more grounded, brave, and on purpose. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. All right, friends, today's episode is gonna get a little vulnerable. But who am I kidding? That's the whole point of this podcast in the first place. We talk about the vulnerable stuff about being human, where it might intersect with fundraising, and really how we can use it as a mirror to develop our internal skills rather than looking to the world for validation and a sense of our own well-being. We're getting practice here and putting in reps of doing that for ourselves. As my coach says, insourcing our own okayness, our own wellness. First, going to ourselves to be the source of that okayness, and then offering what we want to offer to the world, whether it's fundraising, whether it's business, whatever it is. First, coming from a place of, I know how to make myself okay, and I'm willing to listen to myself when I'm not okay and accept that. So that's what we do here. It's not always the cleanest. Sometimes it's messy. And you know what? That's okay, because that's being human. But today what I want to talk about is making the ask and that feeling that happens inside of you when you're about to ask somebody for money and it feels personal. Like if I didn't know any better, it would seem like I am asking for me, even though I know that I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for the mission that I am supporting here, my organization that I work for. But, you know, it's not necessarily a strategic feeling. It's not a professional feeling. It's a personal feeling. Like something about you is actually on the line in that conversation. And today I want to talk about why this happens and what you can do about it. Maybe that's working for you. If it is, bless you. Enjoy that. But if it's not working for you, or if you're anything like me and you started to notice that your body is really not here for that, if your body's starting to talk to you and say, this isn't sustainable, this roller coaster ride of gut clenching or heart pounding, waiting for someone to give an answer to a request for a donation, can't be every day. Like we got to change something up here and do something about it. So when we ask someone to support our cause, what's actually happening? we're creating a social risk. And as long as humans have been around, we've needed to rely on each other, right? If you are in a good relationship with me, that means I can get fed, you can get fed. We look out for each other. So there's a really human and natural tendency to shy away from things that could cause that social risk to take place. Suddenly, if you see me differently, that could have the effect of destabilizing my own well-being, right? That's the feeling that happens on the inside. They might reject me. I might lose a connection here. And that triggers the feeling of fight, which can show up like pushy energy, having an agenda, wanting to get something done. And guess what? The donor can feel that. That also might trigger flight, which is avoidance. I told the famous story of a university development department that have a sign on each desk of the fundraising team that says, outwardly, this person should be out raising money. And the part of the sign facing that person who sits at that desk says, I should be out raising money. So my question is, why would they need a sign like that? Why do they even need a sign that says, I should be out raising money? This person should be out raising money. It's because it's really common in fundraising to avoid making the ask. And nobody ever really told me that was going to be maybe the biggest thing that I came up against, was my own internal story about what it means if I'm making the ask, what it means if I'm avoiding the ask. And it really heartened me to hear that story, that a famous university that did great on fundraising, hired the best people or whatever, they had the resources to put into really great professionals. Even they needed a reminder not to hide. So that natural avoidance of doing something that might cause a social risk. And then freeze. It could trigger overthinking or rambling or getting ready to get ready to ask. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you. I remember one time I was sitting with a campaign committee about starting a new campaign. It was going to be a really big campaign, bigger than we had done before. And after a few different meetings where we were trying to get on the same page about what the case would be, the case for support, what the goal would be, who would be the main donors, I remember a board member complaining. And I remember him saying, it seems like we're getting ready to get ready here. And of course, because that neural pathway had been so well worn over my lifetime, I immediately took it personally. I immediately took it as a personal attack. And the reason it hurt, the reason it always hurts when we're triggered, is because there was a grain of truth to it. I was getting ready to get ready. For me to move forward, I had a belief that I needed my team, I needed my committee to be on the same page with me. I needed them to be clear that they were going to be making asks in this campaign, right? It's not one of those campaigns where the professional does all the asking. We were asking these folks to lean into their networks where they already had relationships and make asks there. I felt like that was an important thing to get underway first. And I didn't feel at that moment like we were there yet. But he called us out as an organization for too much prep and not enough action. So there's a real balance to strike there. For people to feel like they're on a winning team, we're moving forward, and also getting on the same page about what this is that we're doing together. So your discomfort isn't a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's a sign that your nervous system thinks that something important is at stake. So fundraiser type people who work in nonprofits, people who work in helping professions are often they're helpers by nature. They're highly attuned to others. They've got a spidey sense for when something doesn't feel right, for when something feels off. And they've been conditioned often to earn their worth through being needed by others. And guess what? That is not a bad thing. That's a superpower in fundraising. It's like a spider on a web, being able to feel the slightest tremor of something hitting that web is to say, oh, I'm in tune. I have a web of awareness around me. I can feel when something is not landing right with a potential donor, and I can feel when it is. So that's a highly attuned to others sense, like a spidey sense. But it can tip. And that was certainly the case sometimes for me. So when it tips, the ask goes from will you give to do you value me? Or will you support this turns into am I enough? And your answer is going to be a really big data point for whether I decide I'm enough or not. When your identity is tied to being helpful, asking for something back can feel like breaking an unspoken rule. Like, I am meant to be helping you, not to be asking. If I think that asking is taking something from you, that's going to feel like a no-go zone. That's going to feel like danger, danger, danger. Don't cross this line. If I feel like that's what asking you for a donation is, I'm going to avoid that. I'm talking about me personally. But if I feel, and this was also the case for me in other times in my fundraising career, if I feel like asking you to give is a gift that allows you to carry out a belief that you already have, which is that you are a generous person, here's a way that you can put that belief into action, that doesn't feel like taking to you. That feels like giving to you. So can you see how it's a different mindset? The story you're telling yourself going into the ask really shows up in a moment like this, and it translates to the donor. But when you hesitate, when you feel like it's taking from them, you make fewer asks. Or you might have that nervous energy in your ask, which is overcompensating and coming across as pressure for the donor. Or you might internalize the outcomes and feel like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing this well enough. Let me push harder. And guess what? That's where the burnout comes in. That's where we get to that overwhelming statistic within fundraising, which is that we're moving on within 16 to 24 months. We're moving on to another job because we feel like that job is too stressful. That job is asking too much. That job is undoable. I had someone reach out to me about a job posting for a fundraiser, and they were looking for a director of development position. And they said, you know what? This isn't getting any traction. Can you take a look at it, Erin, and tell me why? And I said, sure, send it over. And that job description had been out for maybe 2 or 3 months. They had had 2 people apply, which was a little strange. And both people pulled their applications and said, never mind. So I was like, I'm curious about this. And I read the job description. And it became immediately clear to me why they weren't getting the response that they wanted to get. It was too much. It was too much work. It was so overwhelming. And I was putting myself in the shoes of a person reading this, and I said, there's no way. This is much more than 40 hours a week. This is nights and weekends. This is travel. This is creating a program that's never been done before. The organization was new. It was a heavy lift. And when I talked to this friend about what I had seen in the job description and I shared my feedback with him, we had an amazing conversation because it turned out that organization had some tremendous firepower behind it in terms of funds already raised, prospects already identified, a board that considered itself to be fundraisers and was already raising millions. But none of that found its way into the job description. So it looked like this is going to be starting from scratch. You're going to have to find all the prospects. You're going to have to ask all the donors. You're going to have to raise all the money, do it in short order, without staff, without a team, just by yourself. And it turned out that that wasn't actually the case. That yes, the person was going to have to build a program, but that there was real potential to this, that there were significant donations that had already been raised and donors that had already been identified. So when we talk about burnout, that's a real part of it. I think this is what I was able to convey to my friend, with the context of 16 to 24 months before fundraisers are changing jobs. You need to make the case as the organization, whether you think this is right or wrong, you need to make the case of why this is a good place to work and why you will see the applicant as a full human being, not just an ATM. People are looking for that now. That should be, in my opinion, part of any job description. You should say what the salary range is, and you should say that it's not all on your shoulders. If that's a part of your culture, if you have a culture of philanthropy, or you're even working toward that, you should be transparent about that in the job description. And I think when it comes to burnout, it's not the ask that burns people out. It's the meaning they make inside as a result of those conversations on the outside. It's the meaning we make of our results, what we think people think of us, if we're good or bad at our job. It's that internal stuff that causes the hurt. This feels personal to you because your body thinks that the connection is at risk. And connection is the most important thing that a fundraiser should care about, right? Not the money, but the connection, the relationships, building those relationships with people and cultivating those, taking good care of those relationships. And someday, it might turn into an ask. Also important to remember what to do about this. It's important to remember that their response is about them. It's not a verdict on you. There are 100 factors that go into someone saying yes or no. And when we believe the sort of entrancing idea that this is about us, their yes is about us, or their no is about us, or that we are a strong contributing factor to their yes or their no, it's just not a good place to be because it can tip. If you're up one moment, you're down the next. And sure, you might be like me. You might have had donors say, I give here because of you. And my challenge to you is to receive that with grace and put it immediately out of your mind, because that can really lead you in the wrong direction. If you insert yourself in it, it's just, there's nothing good down that road. It can get confusing. It can get messy. So I want to bring you, like I do in every episode of this podcast, back to a regulated place. So before you make that ask, I want you to feel your feet on the ground and do the physiological breath that Andrew Huberman talks about. 2 inhales through the nose and 1 exhale through the mouth. And make that exhale longer than the inhale. You can do this for 30 seconds. And it just tells your nervous system, hey, we're okay. You may not even realize it, that you do this when you go to sleep. That is something that's natural to all bodies. And it can bring you back to a regulated state before you make the ask. And then notice what's in the room. If you've got tunnel vision and all you can see is the 5 inches directly in front of you, that's a good indication that you are in fight or flight. Our peripheral vision opens up and we can actually see more of the room around us when we're in a grounded state. So being in a room with a donor and taking a moment to look around, to turn your head to the left and the right, helps your body to say, we're okay here. Orient to the room, and that brings more presence to the person in front of you. And guess what? That's what we all want. We want the person in front of us to be present with us, to know that they really see us. And if you're on the donor side, it really goes a long way to feel like this development professional sees me as a person, that they're not just looking at me as a walking ATM, right? They are able to be present with me. This is why this work is the edge. It is the business edge for fundraisers, and I think it is an advantage. Those who can calm their nervous system while they're in conversation with the donor are going to be perceived by that donor or potential donor as a safe person that they can sit with, that they can be with. They're not going to be running for the door because they're like, I just feel weird around this person. They're so anxious. Ask me how I know. That was my brand in fundraising, the anxious fundraiser. And just remember that the ask is offering an opportunity to them. It's a gift that you're offering to them. It's not asking for approval of you as a person. So as I bring this episode to a close, I want to just reflect to you that you're not asking for money. You're inviting someone into something that's meaningful. And the more you can stay connected to yourself in that moment, the less it's going to feel like something is being taken from you, and the less it's going to feel like you're taking something from the donor. You're going to be less likely to walk away from that conversation and need a nap. Feel like, oh, I left my body. I don't even know what I said, right? You're going to be more stable and you're going to be more yourself. You're not going to abandon yourself in that moment. And that coming back to yourself is always going to be the answer, no matter what the situation is. Coming back to yourself is grounding your nervous system. So if asking for money has ever felt more personal than you expected, know that you're not alone and you're not broken. You're human. And this is work you can learn to do differently. What if fundraising is a mirror for you to grow into the kind of person who can regulate their nervous system no matter what is happening, and donors feel really comfy around and they want to give? What if that was your reality? Okay, here are your takeaways. Number 1, your discomfort during the ask isn't a problem. It's your nervous system trying to protect connection. Number 2, when asking feels personal, it's often because your identity is tied to being helpful. Number 3, It's not the ask that burns fundraisers out. It's the meaning they make about themselves in the process. Number 4, a donor's response is about them, not a verdict on you. And finally, number 5, the most powerful shift, you're not asking for money, you're offering an opportunity. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.